my house to yours, welcome to EMS at Sea Level, and welcome to this special EMS at Sea Level in conjunction with EMSNOW and in4ma on tour. I just want to start by thanking you gentlemen for doing this tour. It's certainly been plenty of chatter in the industry whilst you've been in Tunisia, and a quick thank you to your very generous and kind sponsors, IPC, on behalf of Dieter, and Cogiscan, Micronic, Luminovo, and Trusted Parts for Eric's element in there. So extensive trip, Eric. You've been a very busy couple of boys. Just give me a kind of a quick catch up of which companies you visited and where you've been. I know it's been quite a few.
It's been a whirlwind so far. We arrived last Sunday in Tunisia. Then on Monday, we did 2 companies a day through the week and 1 on Friday. So I'll just name those in order. On Monday, we saw Zollner and AsteelFlash. Zollner has a new business park that they're building down there, which was interesting. AsteelFlash is more in the city, in the heart of Tunis, whereas Zollner was about an hour south of Tunis. Then on Tuesday, we saw Lacroix and TIS. TIS, of course, is the Tunisian subsidiary of All Circuits, the French EMS. On Wednesday, we saw ATEMS. They're part of the Altrix group, and Circor, the Swiss-based EMS, who is many facilities now. On Thursday was interesting. We drove out and we saw a company called Pratique Electronique. Pratique was the first true indigenous in Tunisian company EMS that we saw. All the others were foreign-owned. And then in the afternoon, we dropped by and saw emkaMED, another part of a French company. And on Friday, we only saw one, but it was a very good end to the, we saw EONTech, who is part of the OneTech group. And they are more of a conglomerate with lots of different things going on there. And so that was a great end to it. And lest you think it was all just, work, we tried to squeeze a little fun in. We had a nice evening out last Wednesday night in the heart of Tunis on a rooftop overlooking everything, and got to stroll around a bit. And then the afternoon we left, we actually went out to the coast a bit and strolled through some of the old stuff. We didn't get to see any of the ruins, although we did see the aqueduct, the 2,000-year-old aqueduct that is remarkably well preserved, that came from the mountains all the way to Carthage, like 124 kilometers. So as an old history buff, I love that kind of stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important, if you guys take a vacation together as often as you seem to be doing, important to get some culture in there, as well as just spending your days geeking out in factories. Dieter, I wanted to just again to get a scale of what's going on. Give me some of the kind of big headline numbers with respect to Tunisia, the kind of scale in terms of revenue, headcount, SMT lines, whatever you think.
Our figures are still very rough, to say so. We did get a lot of information. I had done previous analysis of this market. Still, we were astonished with some of the statements made during our visit in regards to the quantity of companies. It ranged between 60 and 134 EMS companies in Tunisia, which was shocking looking at my list of just 23 companies. Now, we have to realize that, and that was what we were told as well, that there is many very small Tunisian companies, whereas the big companies are full 100% export companies. We have to realize that there are companies who are serving the North African market as well, because there is a demand in North Africa as well. So, then I had to break it down according to my definition what an EMS is. A pure cable harness manufacturer or a pure electrical cabinet manufacturer, in my opinion, is not an EMS. So My conclusion was that we are talking about 60 EMS companies, of which at the moment I'm missing 37. So, and those 37, as I said, are probably in the majority serving the North African market. They are probably small as well, in the region of 1 million, maybe 1.5 million, but that's it. So we did a rough calculation on the revenues, which still have an inaccuracy of, let's say, plus minus 15%. We came out with 830 million euros for 2023, which is a small plus of plus 2.2% to 2022. Those companies employ about 11,500 heads in 2022, and they reduced already in 2023 by 500, even so the revenue still went up. But we have been talking with one company who said, well, we are constantly working on a productivity increase, and we are trying to lay off people and at the same time increase our revenue. So that is the situation. Now, we had heard messages about 400 SMT lines over here. No, not over there, because we are in France now. In Tunisia, and no, we came out with 200 to 240 SMT line. And the most important thing is we got a very valuable connection to the Tunisian Electronics Association, Tunelec. We met with the president of Tunelec, and we met with the vice president of Tunelec, both very, very nice people, and we are pretty sure that we can achieve a very good relation in the future, and both helping each other.
Yeah, to provide more data. The other thing that I was really interested in when I looked at it, and you know, I love to hear Eric practicing his accents, and his German's very good. His French, yeah, not so sure, but it's certainly getting there. But a lot of French companies, and I was curious of the timeline of the development of the industry in Tunisia. And was it the French that were there first? Because obviously now you have Zollner and you have other companies there like Circor, a Swiss company. How's that development occurred?
To the large majority, it's automotive electronics being done down here. And behind a lot of those has been Valeo as the OEM that has taught a lot of them and helped a lot of them set up. And a lot of the facilities that we see came from, you know, or Valeo people a bit. You know, we run into people who worked at Valeo all over the place. emkaMED, the other big French, is also very much involved. Some of the facilities we visited were ex-emkaMED ones. So yes, to your question, it really was the French because of the colonial history. What was it, between 1881 and 1956? This was a French colony down in Tunisia. So very strong influence. As a matter of fact, it's, you know, it's the second language in the country too, right? So. So yeah, that is definitely the history of the industry here. Others are coming in and looking to benefit. Interestingly, the Chinese we don't really see so much yet, but we'll see how that might pick up in the future.
Yeah, but a very strong contingent from elsewhere in Europe. The other thing, Eric, that you talked about in the first couple of podcasts, and you both were explaining, was this idea of a export-only business, and these export-only zones where it's almost as if the factory is a trade zone of its own. Just explain a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic down here. All of the components, first of all, there's no distributors on the ground over here, right? So everything is exported in. When you get the designation of 100% export, that means that all the components you import in tax-free need to add some value add, and you can export it tax-free as well. However, The way it comes in is interesting. It's primarily by boat, right, by ships. They leave the ports. The main ones we hear about are Marseille and Genoa in Italy. And they have, most of the companies have a facility at that end where they have the distributors send the components there. They get consolidated into kits. They're put on a boat that's 24 hours roughly over to Tunis. They're unloaded. But a custom officer locks the crate at the point of where the ship takes off. Then it gets delivered to the factory in Tunisia, and a customs officer has to be there to unlock it. A few days later, they will return. You know, it goes in reverse. The finished goods are stuck into in the facility into a container. The container is locked by a customs officer there, shipped through the ports back up to whichever, Genoa, Marseille, wherever, and it gets unlocked and then distributed there. So, you know, it sounds bureaucratic and cumbersome. It works. It's really not a bottleneck. Most of them some have their own authorized people. We discovered later in the week that it doesn't have to be in a customs. There's a program by which you can certify some of your own employees. It takes 2 years of an audit to get there, but it can be accomplished. And and so it's just the big point. And the issue became, though, not to go down a rabbit's hole, we'll speak about this later. What about excess material, right? And we've heard some varying stories that we still need to tease out. That we heard from one company that you can only export up to 1 million per year because that's considered trading. That's not considered value add. Where we heard from several others that it's really not that big a deal. And of course, some said we don't even consider it because we never have excess, right? So there's a variety of things going. The other slight variation on it is you can ship 10% of what you produce to another company within Tunis, as long as that company is 100% export as well, and then they may integrate that into something and then export it. But there's not a market down here that they're selling into, really, right? All of this to derive the tax benefit, to have no VAT, and you bring it in, you get it out.
Yeah, it works pretty much like a trade zone would work, but it's a dispersed model, so it works clever, and it seems a pretty smart way of doing it. Dieter, I wanted to get into some of the findings, some of what you've learned in the last week, some of the things that perhaps you saw that you weren't expecting. Start with the facilities there and the industries they're serving and the kind of technology kind of level in terms of manufacturing capability.
Yeah, well, to say so, not astonishingly, about 50% of the products manufactured in Tunisia are going into the automotive industry. Normally, they are not going into the automotive industry direct, but they're going to a tier one, who is then supplying the various automotive manufacturers. Interestingly, and I hadn't thought about that in the past, there's a lot of communication equipment being manufactured over here. And this is something which we have seen in a decline in mainland Europe and in the past. And I haven't thought about it. Where it went to. I thought it's all gone to Far East, but seemingly some of that has been going to Tunisia, and so communication has a valid market share over here. In addition, industrial electronics, energy, a little, not too much, but a little lighting as well, LED, typical LED stuff with metal-backed PCBs. So that is what is being manufactured over here. In regards to the technology, we have seen factories where, first of all, the percentage of THT being assembled is higher than in Europe. Yeah? So it looks as if there are more products going over here with THT, because that is still a lot of manual labor, and manual labor over here is very inexpensive. So they are transferring it over here. This means as well, we have seen many wave soldering machines over here, manual assembly of the THT components and putting it over the wave. We have seen few selective soldering machines. We have seen many SMT lines. And here again, you have high volume machines in the big companies, but you have, for example, I think we saw 2 or 3 companies which were more specialized on low volume. Let's talk about 10 pieces to maximum 40,000 pieces. And those companies are working on micronic machines because you can make a changeover much more rapid than with the big machines. Yeah. So that is the majority what we saw. Regarding added things like flying probe, like ICT, like functional test, we have seen much of this. So, and I'd say about 50% of the products manufactured over here are being box built as well. So they do the final assembly of the product. Some of it even being going into the final packaging and being shipped to the end customer right away. So nothing unusual compared to Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty broad mix. And Eric, I know when you were talking in one of the podcasts about one particular facility, you said you'd seen X number of SMT lines, but a surprising number of wave soldering lines in the same facility, which actually, you know, is testament to what Dieter's saying about THT there. It seems the industry is on a bit of an upward trend there. The industry is tough everywhere at the moment, I think. So maybe that's not as rapid as it has been in previous years. What were you hearing, Eric, about people's plans to grow and expand those facilities? And is it just volume that or capacity that they're looking to increase, or are they looking to make that step up in terms of capability as well?
Yeah, I would say that the primary focus is on growing and optimizing their existing capacity. You know, we saw one currently has, I think, 7 or 8 SMT lines. They have room and want to grow to 12 within the facility. So I think the first piece is optimizing the space. We saw a lot where they had done some redesigning of the flow within the factory. So we see a lot of that, a lot of talk of lean initiatives and that type, you know, that whole philosophy and how to optimize the flow. However, the other side is, I mean, Zollner is a great example. We saw the facility we were at the first day with Zollner is currently a rented one because they've actually bought land and this year will break ground. And we saw the plans for that. They will be developing in 4 phases a whole business park down there within a larger industrial park. And then another one we saw, who I won't name, they're actually probably going to be looking for land to grow and establish. You know, I think that they feel like they're outgrowing it. And it's funny, you know, where these facilities are located, land is getting more expensive too. That's the other trend behind some of this. And so you see a lot of within Tunis itself, Rob, it's much more congested and your ability to grow is more limited. We've been out in, you know, 100, 150 kilometers outside of Tunis visiting where you're in a village. It's really the only business in town, right? And then they draw their employees from that base there. So they are probably the #1, you know, employer in those areas too. And there's certainly land. Pratique Electronique, when we saw them, they own the land right next door, right? They could grow very easily. So, but it was right next to farmland too, right? So, so you can see a little of both, but the primary focus certainly is on optimizing existing capacity.
Yeah, optimizing and getting more productivity out of that. And you mentioned them recruiting talent from nearby, which you know, if nearby is farmland, then they're probably recruiting people from that particular industry, and that requires a lot of training. Dieter, we're constantly talking about talent, particularly in the rest of Europe and particularly in Western Europe, and the challenge of getting talent. Is Tunisia similar in terms of talent shortages? And is that because there isn't an established base? Or is it because the people that do get trained and are skilled are heading to Europe for a bigger salary?
Tunisia has an education system for the higher education, which is transferred in the majority in regards to the structure from France, until the 20th of March 1956. Tunisia was more or less a department of France. And on the 20th of March 1956, they gained independence. But even today, they have two law systems. One is a Code Civil, which is French, and then they have the Islamic right. So it's a mix. In addition, in that education systems, they have very, very professional universities and technical universities. And I was told last week in a video conference I had with the CEO of a large EMS company who is having a factory over here in Tunisia, he said, well, I can tell you that the education of the Tunisian engineers, for example, is similar, if not even better than in France. So these people have a high qualification. The problem is the unemployment rate. There is an official number, but there is probably as well an unofficial number. The official number ranges between 12 and 14%. But the unofficial number, some people say, might be higher than 20%, for the simple reason that people who have no job get no payment for it. So some people say, well, we just stay home, we don't register as being unemployed. So there is a gray area over here of unemployed people. Now, again, yes, then people go, but they do not go in the majority for getting a higher pay. They get because they do want to get a job at all. There is a certain problem with some studies, like, for example, doctors, medical doctors. Last year, 6,000 medical doctors left Tunisia. And in the majority, they went to Europe and to Canada. So that is hurting the people. On average, the fluctuation, we were told, ranges about 7%. So, but now we have to say, will these people go and never come back? No. We are pretty sure that this is not the case. See, Tunisia is a country with a very, very old and long culture. Even the Romans have been in Tunisia more than 2,000 years ago. And people have pride in their country. And if they could get a reasonably paid job in Tunisia, they will probably prefer that rather than going abroad. And if they go abroad for a certain period of time, let's say maybe for 5, 10, or 15 years, to collect sufficient money to then come back to Tunisia. And that is, for example, something totally different if you have our nice refugees from Afghanistan and Syria. Those are countries with no culture.
They're not coming back.
People will not go back there. But Tunisia is different. And while we were doing these podcasts on LinkedIn, it was astonishing that we got 40 to 50 requests to connect from, in the majority, Tunisian people, either living in Tunisia at the moment, having a job there, or from Tunisian people living abroad. Yeah. So they're very interested, and I assume as well is that they want to stay connected. They want to be informed what is happening in the industry, so they can then make the right decision whether to go abroad or whether to return home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the point is, yes, there is a huge difference in the labor cost. If we look at the direct labor, we are talking about a minimum salary of 208 euros a month. So looking at Central Eastern Europe, which is an attractive area to manufacture, they can't compete with Tunisia. Tunisia is on a level where we think Tunisia can compete with the Far East. So it's definitely an alternative when we talk about reshoring, and where with re-engineering or whatsoever, we cannot manage to manufacture those products in Europe mainland, that we then can transfer them to Tunisia, which is much closer by, and thus has a much lower environmental impact.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And, you know, Eric, we know it's not just about labor costs when you look at that. And my, you know, my next question was, do you see that same desire to automate to mitigate talent shortages? It's not required in terms of improving efficiency if labor rates are sufficiently low. What is the demand for automation and digital transformation like in Tunisia right now?
Yeah, and it's a good question. You're right. You have to balance that with the labor and the type of manufacturing, as Dieter was indicating, the high amount of pin through hole. That can't be automated. Or if you did automate, it would be awfully expensive, right? So because I mean, we saw some really complex boards that would be very, very hard to automate and put together the way that they're constructed. So so because talent shortages is not an issue, yeah. And again, the industry has primarily, you know, everything pre-reflow is pretty much automated, right? It's really the post-reflow thing. And you could probably squeeze some efficiency out of that, but, you know, I don't really see that, especially with at the volume levels, right? That stuff is just not at a high enough volume to justify the expense. However, they are upgrading equipment, right? So we do see that in an attempt to deal with smaller componentry that's going on with the whole miniaturization trend, and also to be a lot faster. So as Dieter indicated, we saw some who might have, and he mentioned, you know, one of my sponsors, Mycronic, we saw a lot of their equipment here, but then within those same factories, we might see the acquisition of the next SMT line is from a different brand that they perceive as being able to handle higher volume and work a lot faster. So we certainly see that. The digitalization, I mean, digitalization is everywhere, right? I mean, everything has become, although one factory did seem to have a lot more paper than we thought. When I asked them about that, they said, "Oh no, we're digitalized." So they're definitely looking to upgrade equipment. That's going to be an ongoing thing. You see a lot more of the SPA, AOI out there. You know, some of the facilities, quite frankly, you know, because of the space constrictions in these smaller places, the line wasn't steady flow. So there's a desire to improve that, and we see that happening as well. So yeah, they're definitely going to be upgrading equipment as we move forward.
Yeah. Dieter, one of the other mega trends we're seeing is order books. Stuff's getting scheduled out, orders are getting harder to find. What impact is that going to have on those Tunisian factories that are owned by the European companies that perhaps are seeing a little bit of softening in demand, shall we say?
Well, yeah, we have seen a strong slowdown in Europe in the first quarter of 2024 compared to the first quarter of 2023. We are talking at the moment about -10 to -12%, which is giving a lot of people a headache. But interestingly enough, we saw the same over here in Tunisia, because they did not everybody told us directly straight on that is the case. but we were given numbers in regards to headcount reduction in 2024 between 10 and 15%. So they are, and they have this advantage. They have the advantage. They do not only work with fixed employees, they can work with temporary employees, and those temporary employees, they can lay off any day, which means, for example, you have 700 people in the factory, of which you only have 400 with a fixed employment. You have 300 temporary workers, and you can give them a temporary contract up to 4 years. Yeah, and you can split that up. You can give them one contract for 4 years, or you can give them 4 contracts for 1 year. Yeah, so only after the employee has worked in the company for 4 years in total, he needs to have a fixed contract. So what people then do, they are using this tool to immediately reduce labor cost. And that is a very smart tool, which we don't have in Europe. Yeah, it's not that easy to lay off people in Europe, and it's not that easy to say, well, we're gonna have 30 to 40% of our employees on a temporary contract. That's not, nobody would allow that. Over here, it is possible, and they are doing it. So they're reducing the amount of people immediately when they see the business slowing down, and that's what they see in 2024. And again, if I'm being asked, well, how long is that going to last? It's difficult to say. My original predictions were it's going to pick up in the third quarter again, but it could last as well until the end of the year before it picks up. Nobody knows that exactly.
No, it's hard to say.
Dieter did guarantee to one company that business would be better by the end of the year.
Well, that's very kind. It's interesting to find out what that guarantee is backed up by. That's the most important thing.
Exactly. So,
you know, are you going to fill up that shortfall? Before we get on to some broader stuff, I just wanted to know if there are any kind of big trends that you noticed there that perhaps we haven't discussed so far. Eric, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, no, I would flag a few things. The industry over here is both EMS and OEM. There are definitely OEMs manufacturing here with, you know, pretty much in the automotive side. One company who we won't mention, we spoke to because we thought they were in EMS. They told us and responded very politely, saying, no, we don't do any EMS work. Everybody else we spoke to here said, oh, no, they do EMS work. And they started naming who they're doing EMS work for, right? So, which is interesting. So we certainly have that OEM doing, you know, filling capacity with EMS work, but not wanting to really advertise that. Two other things I touch. One of the biggest challenge over here is logistics, getting things around. Tunisia and the drivers are just crazy. I mean, it is an experience over here, and getting through Tunisia can be very congested. So without fail, the issue most people list as their number one challenge is really has to do with logistics, and it's not really the customs piece, the unlocking. It's the moving of parts. Some of them get it in from different disties, and the materials arrive on different days, so you have to wait to get it all in order to get a complete kit. And lastly, I would say two issues. One is the role of women over here is very, very strong. We see that in society. We see that in the facilities too. And many men have told us that the women are harder workers and probably as well or better educated than the men over here. So they have a very strong role to play in the industry, and we saw many impressive women on the, you know, in our meetings. And then the whole push towards sustainability on a much larger issue, you know, is certainly a drive over here too. That makes sense though, right? Most of them are European-based companies, and that's high on their mission statement.
Yeah, it's going to be part of their agenda. Dieter, anything to add? And supplementary question, what else do you see? And I know you've only been in Tunisia, but what else can we expect from elsewhere in North Africa? Is it a band across the top that we should be watching?
Well, it very much depends on the political structure of the countries in Northern Africa. See, money goes where there is stability. And if you want to have economic growth, you need to have people investing in the countries. And people will not invest in countries where there is a dictatorship, where there is political uproar. We have seen that in many cases, in countries where there is political instability, the countries don't grow fast. In solid democratic structure, you see a much higher economic growth, and that is for the advantage of all the people in those countries. So if we look to the right of Tunisia, Libya, to be honest, I can't tell you what is happening there. And I wouldn't even dare to go there, to travel there. Egypt, well, Egypt being close to Gaza and even having those tunnels right to Gaza, I don't know whether that is not a big barrel of dynamite. To the left, then you have Algeria. You don't hear a lot about Algeria. Algeria is quite solid with their gas and oil explorations. So there, other than that, there is not much industry. Morocco, yes, there is some electronics and electrical industry, but again, that is already today more expensive than Tunisia. So to say so, the lonely star in North Africa, in my opinion, is Tunisia. And they've had this revolution, I think, in 2011. And it looks as if the political situation is now relatively stable. And we talked with people, most people said, oh, yes, we love our new president because he is not a member of one of the important Tunisian families. He is a university professor. We heard critical voices about him as well. So, but it looks as if this president is able to develop a stable environment, and with such a situation, the economy will continue to grow, and it might even grow faster than the European market, as I said before, because being a low-cost country and the industry looking for low-cost alternatives, might be that this will cause a higher growth rate in Tunisia than in main Europe.
Yeah, and that often is the case, and it's got, as you alluded to, it's got catching up to do. Eric,
I just want to say, to follow up on Dieter, the other thing to remember is there is an election here at the end of this year as well, as has been in most countries. A lot of elections going on in important countries around the world.
Everywhere. Half the world is voting this year, I think.
Yeah, and so Tunisia has theirs, I think they said around November, December this year. So, and I even asked who are the candidates, and nobody could tell me. So somebody knows. I just don't know how that works over here, but that will be something else to watch over here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Eric, I wanted to I know you're traveling through France at the moment. You find yourself in the Champagne region, a very pleasant part of France. Where are you off to next, and what does this coming week look like for you?
Yeah, this will be fun. So yes, we're in France today. We're actually, as soon as we're done with this, we'll pack up and continue driving. We have an interview Monday morning in France with the new CEO of a very large French company, discussing much more strategic, getting it to meet him and find out what the plans are for that. I guess I could name it. We're going to meet with the new CEO of Eolan, and we'll be talking about that in a podcast Monday. Then we moved back to Germany. Then Monday afternoon, 800 some kilometers, we drive across France back to Germany, more southern Germany. We'll visit on Tuesday with 2 EMS companies there. Then we head up to towards the Ulm area. Actually, we see one more company Wednesday morning on our way to Ulm. We have a dinner that Wednesday night, and then Dieter has his EMS forum that in4ma organizes and runs in cooperation with IPC. That will be with over 100 primarily EMS executives from the German-speaking countries of Europe present for that. Dieter is working diligently on a couple of his presentations, and I hear tell that I'm giving a presentation there as well about Tunisia. So we'll see. Stay tuned on that. Then Friday, we visit with one more company, and Dieter drops me at the Frankfurt airport, and I fly home Saturday, and Dieter goes home and collapses in his own bed. So
there you go. Doesn't sound too bad. And Dieter, Ulm, you've flagged this event as being an EMS and PCB event, so a little bit of a change there. Tell me what the attendance looks like. Eric's already mentioned more than 100 people, and what you're expecting to be top of mind for these people. Obviously, order books are going to be one of the things they're going to want to talk about, but what else are you expecting them to want to talk about this week?
We will have, number one, a lot of interesting discussions this coming week at the EMS and PCB forum. We have 120 participants at the moment. I did expect more, but it's as well a matter of the economy. You can really see that people are trying to save money wherever they can, even so. My opinion, they are saving money on the wrong things. Yeah, they can invite me into their factory, and I'm going to show them many other stupid things where they invest money that doesn't give them anything. Over here, our EMS forum is not a marketing event. It is a training event, because we are training people with proper market data to make the right decisions. And that's why this year we are focusing on manufacturing alternatives. We're going to show Central Eastern Europe. We're going to show Tunisia as alternatives for the companies once they have achieved a certain size. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to open up their own facility. But see, if we look at the PCB industry, the PCB industry has declined tremendously in Europe, and is so small that it is alarming. And what did those companies do to survive? They started to not only manufacture and sell PCBs, they started trading of PCBs. And there might be a lot of cases where this could be an alternative for smaller companies who are faced with shrinking margins, that they do a certain percentage of the jobs themselves and do a certain percent by trading with Central Eastern European EMS companies or with Tunisian EMS companies. And doing this, achieve a better margin and more stable results. So that is what we hope we can share with the audience. In addition, sadly enough, last week we had to report the death of Michael Gush, who has been doing the European PCB statistics for the last 22 years. He died last Friday, and to say so, it had been expected. He called me earlier this year, and we did a transfer of his statistics on the 14th of June when I visited at his home. And he gave me all the data files, and I started working on those. And since April, I'm now doing the PCB statistics as well. Something, for example, which is interesting for one of the Tunisian companies as well, OneTech Group. OneTech Group does not only have the EMS business called ELeonetech, they have FUBA as well. FUBA used to be the biggest German PCB manufacturer before they filed for insolvency about 27 years ago. But they set up a factory together with the Salami family in the 90s already. And when FUBA filed for insolvency, Salami family bought the remaining shares, and they are now the only Tunisian PCB manufacturer, and they are supplying those PCBs as well to other EMS companies in Tunisia. So very interesting, and I will probably be able in a couple of months to tell you more. I have to dig into that data again. I lost it somehow out of sight 22 years ago.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. And two things I'd like to comment on from there. One is that Michael was a very impressive man, a good speaker, someone who cared a huge amount about the industry, a gentleman, and very good at the data he produced. And I'm glad to hear that you'll be taking ongoing care of that data. And the second one is that I would say that nobody should save money by not going to see Dieter Weiss. Because he will charge you more to come to your factory and tell you that you're stupid than in a conference. So I think that's really important. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for doing these tours. Every time you do one, they get better and better. It seems that you guys work harder and harder every time. I'll give you both a quick chance to mention your sponsors before we wrap up, but you and they have my sincere thanks. Dieter, who's sponsoring you on this particular occasion?
I can only say I try to continue working as long as possible, and I have to thank IPC for the support they're giving me every day, and I thank Eric as well for sitting next to me in the car every day, trying to make me speed.
Keeping you awake.
By the way, I already got my first speeding ticket yesterday. So the EMSNOW and in4ma tour is always exciting, and it's a lot of work. It's some fun as well. And if it continues the way it did in the first week, I'm going to lose more weight.
There you go. Well, that's never a bad thing. Eric, final word.
Yeah, finally, let me just tip my hat to my sponsors, being Cogiscan, Luminovo, Micronic, and Trusted Parts. We thank you. Without their support, I could not out here be doing this and reporting to the industry as we are. So much gratitude to them. Give them a consideration if you ever cross their paths, please.
Yeah, and I'll be putting links to all those sponsored companies in the show notes. Guys, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to speaking to you when you're back in Texas, Eric, and you've got the second week under your belt. And Dieter, perhaps we can chat about what's on people's minds on this week. But have a wonderful week, have a great event, and we'll chat again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil.
Thank you very much, Phil.